All right. We're at 605 and we got 36. That's a pretty good percentile of people that said they were going to show up. I would take it. I think that's a passing grade, everyone. We did it. Good job. Okay. So a lot of people probably already know who I am, so I'm not going to use any of our time with my normal spiel about who I am and what we're doing. A lot of you guys have already heard that because you've already seen at least generally one Shelterly demo. If not, at a high level, our objective or our mission is to track an animal throughout the entire incident. So that includes hotline, evacuation, caring for them in the shelters, as well as reunification. So what we're trying to build here was a platform for doing that. And what we ended up developing over the last year and a half, 2 years was Shelterly, with the financial support of NAVDAG and a couple of my friends who like to help animals. I think we can all vibe with that a little bit. That's definitely why a lot of us are here. So the application itself, I know there's some other people from other agencies, and sorry, it looks like I'm not looking at you because webcams are weird, but you guys are all over slightly down to the right to me. So I'm gonna continue to do that. But there are people from other agencies here that, or at least have cross agencies, I should say. And so Carrie had a question right out the beginning, which was Amador was interested in using Shelterly. So for this year, what we've done is decided to do effectively a beta release, or at least a small scale, so that we can get really good coverage for support for the agencies that are using Shelterly to make sure that we have good successes, as well as able to incorporate any problems or feedback really quickly. We really don't have a huge amount of resources on the team, and we don't want to spread ourselves too thin when the product's new, because we want it to succeed. So for this year, we're actually bringing on 4 agencies into the Shelterly program. Obviously, NAVDAG, they got dibs, as it were. And then we're going to be doing CCADT, which is the Central California Animal Disaster Team, based out of Fresno, Modesto area. They have a multi-county coverage, as well as Napa Cart has come on board. And then lastly is San Diego Humane, are the 4 agencies that we'll be supporting this year. The intention is to, if it goes successful and we're able to identify some additional funding going forward, to expand out in the following year. I don't have a number of agencies we'll be able to support. It'll be kind of aligned with how much we find it costs to run Shelterly, how many funders we're able to identify out there, what that matrix looks like across time. I already wrote you guys down onto the interest list for Amador. You guys are always able to reach out to me at trevor@navdag.org, and I'll put you on the list as we're able to expand. Like I mentioned, hopefully next year we'll be able to bring on, I fully intend to be able to bring on at least additional agencies. I can't tell you what that number looks like right now, but we definitely want to. Her follow-on question was about hardware and software requirements. The intention of how we're building this is that we actually end up hosting it all for you and running Shelterly. So your hardware and software requirements are going to be owning computers and or iPads or anything along those lines. You won't have to actually host the tool yourself. It ends up just being a website that you're able to access for your team, as I'll kind of show you here. And so those requirements are pretty low. The website itself has been intentionally built to not be resource intensive. In fact, we need to do a little bit on how the UI displays, but from a technology perspective, it would easily run on pretty much everyone's cell phone with no problems, other than some of the stuff is a little more squished than I would like right now, and some of the buttons might be hard to press. But other than that, from a purely technology standpoint, should be able to run on an iPad, laptop, cell phone, anything you got. Maybe an Amazon Kindle if you're feeling frisky. I don't know. Maybe a Kindle Fire. A Kindle Fire probably with like a touchscreen and stuff. Anyways, hopefully that answers your question. So because a lot of you have already seen Shelterly, I'm not going to do we're going to do an abbreviated version of going through the process to kind of highlight some of the new functionality that maybe people didn't see in the previous demonstrations, because this is a very organic product and we've had another month and a half to do work. So one of the things that we did do was change up the login page a little bit. Looks a little bit nicer, but more importantly, we also kind of changed how accounts are set up. And so in this case, we previously had people have usernames, and it was a little confusing to have to remember what your username was. And, especially with people with like hyphens in their last names and stuff, it became a little bit confusing. So since I'm already have your email, your username is just going to be your email, which simplifies a lot of things. And additionally, we had the concern that we were giving out passwords. And obviously, in the last demo, those were not super secure passwords, because if I knew your login, I pretty much knew your password, because it was just your last name with the number 1 on it. So we did add a new approach in which we are now leveraging Amazon to send emails for us. And so when a new incident gets kicked off or a new Shelterly instance goes off, what you're actually going to receive, if you're configured as a user for your organization, is an email directly to your email that says, click here to set your password. So you won't actually have to remember your password, which is going to be really nice. You're going to have to remember it for like 1 to 3 weeks during the actual incident. But across incidents, we really realized that people are probably going to forget their passwords. And when phone calls are starting to come in hot, we don't want people to be like, what was my password? Let me get my notebook out. That's probably at my home, and now I drove down to the shelter. So you're just going to have a link you can click directly from your email. You'll be able to access that from your phone, and all you're going to do is set your password, at which point you can then log into Shelterly on any device, because you'll know your email and you know the password you just set. So we're just trying to really simplify and think through how this is functionally going to work in the field. So that's mainly the main 2 functionalities tied to this. The other one is that we did expose the ability to reset your password. Heaven forbid you do forget the password that you set 3 days ago. We're going to let you do that. It's going to be basically the same idea. So I have a demonstration here. It's a super simple email right now. We're going to add some flair and some cool logos and stuff. But at the end of the day, you get a thing from shelterly.org that says, click here to reset your password. Bada bing, bada boom. The other email will basically be the same thing. It'll say an incident has occurred. Click here to set your password. So very, very similar. I don't have an example of that right now, but the only thing I will point out is you're going to get an email from do not reply at shelterly.org. That type of email might end up in your spam, so just be aware of that. Generally, because they're coming from this Amazon thing that we're using, not going to be a problem. Because we're already tied into this, we have started to talk about potentially doing cell phone notifications as well. I can send you a text message just as easily as I can send you an email. We haven't integrated that yet, but look out for that in the near future. So then you've set your new password, you're ready to log in. I'm going to go ahead and log in here. Nothing much has changed on the homepage. What's going to be occurring here now is we finally got some good feedback on reporting. And so this will have a whole bunch of numbers and maybe some graphs and some cool stuff. But at the end of the day, that's more about the cowboy Ryan Soulsby's of the world and less about us actually doing the lifting, sweeping, scooping, all the verbs around animal care, right? So let's hop into Hotline. And the first thing I'll point out here is we kind of have a little bit different of a take on the map. We kind of refactored our maps a little bit to make them a little bit more obvious what's happening. We got some feedback that the little tabs at the bottom weren't working great. And importantly, we also kind of changed the way these maps load. If you guys noticed when you were playing with it, it might seem a little bit slow when you were changing in between these. We fixed that. Which is really nice. So again, on the right-hand side, you're kind of filtering down. This is all the service requests that are outstanding. You still have the nice little hover tips, and you have some nice little icons that kind of give you a rough indication. So in this case, yellow are shelter in place, red are newly reported, and brown are ones that are basically unable to find, unable to locate type of incidents. Here you can also quickly filter down to just the open ones, the ones that are assigned, which are basically the ones that are being worked by your evacuation team, and then any of the ones that have been closed or resolved. And those are going to be, and remember, a service request gets resolved if all of the animals have been either sheltered in our location or reunified, or effectively marked as we're not going to do that animal. Deceased is an example of an animal that might close a service request. We're not actually closing them. It all happens on the back end. So don't ever worry that you're going to close one and an animal is going to disappear. We're handling that automatically. These workflows, these all pretty much look the same. So there hasn't been much change, but when you go through for a hotline, for example, you just have to come in here, put in some basic information. And as we kind of always talk about, these little stars are going to indicate when a required field is there. That being said, if you try to go to the next step, it's going to tell you. So this is just a queue ahead of time, so you don't have to continually run into those. But don't worry about it. It's going to give you the little helper function there. The little maps down here obviously still work the same way. I did show off last time, but it's a good feature to continually point out is you put in that address and you may want to adjust the actual pin location. So you're able to drag that and that's going to save that. So you can see there's a latitude and a longitude underneath that. And that is actually updating as you drag that around. It doesn't affect your street address. So don't try to find a house by doing that. You do need to get the actual street address from the person. That gets you to the area and then you can, hey, maybe even in this case, the animal might be right across the street. Same street address, but maybe the horse is over there. Who knows? Go to the next step. Here, one of the only real changes that we kind of made was actually getting rid of size being a required field. You can just leave it blank instead of having to choose unknown because we got some feedback and it was just a little redundant. I don't want to necessarily have to select that. So it's going to speed up Hotline just a little bit. Primary colors, all this is the same. We did add medical notes field here. So this isn't for transactions. This isn't for like vet transactions, but you are able to put any kind of medicine they may need to take or any general health concerns. I think people have diabetic dogs and whatnot. So this is a good place to capture that because then it carries through. And when it gets to the sheltering point, that information is exposed. One of the important things on here that I will point out, just because this is really powerful functionality, especially if you're doing Hotline, is this little field right here. This allows you to make a whole bunch of animals at once. And as we've alluded to, this is primarily chickens, but you can come up here, type in the number of chickens you want to make, and now you can make 10 chickens at a time. So that's going to be one where it's going to be a training issue. I think that's not as obvious as it could be, but we also have played with other ideas and this seems to work the best. So just keep that in mind. It'll make an exact copy of whatever you put here 10 times inside of this service request. So don't go in here and start filling out max the chicken, and then you're going to end up with 10 max the chickens. Leave it pretty broad. And the idea is to make it fast, right? The idea is this is Hotline. We want to get in there and get that information out there quickly. I'll point out any kind of date field is going to have this little pop-up guy. Realize there's two of them. So you've got a date as well as a time that you can set there. And we're going to keep those as timestamps as you go along. I'm going to go ahead and not make 10 chickens. We'll just make the one chicken. Then you get to the actual end of the line here. And this has the shipping is the same as the billing address type functionality. So a lot of cases, the owner is exactly equal to where the animal may exist, but in some cases, maybe it's not. So that's where the owner lives. We can come in here and that's where the actual animal lives, but it lives there. Just to point out you can move the little pin guy again. Any directions that you want to put here, as well as some interesting attributes, receiving verbal permission. Are they going to provide a key? Is the property accessible? I think this one is because it's in a pretty urban setting. And can you turn around on their property? In this case, most likely not. It's in a smaller neighborhood. We probably don't want to check that. You click finish and create. It's going to drop you right onto that service request. Oops. There it goes. And so we can see there's that 423 Madrone. If I click over here, the owner has a slightly different address, so you can see, as well as the service address is referred to by its address right there. Couple other things that have been added a little bit are these contact logs. So out from the owner, if you ever call the owner, which is a pretty common occurrence from either Hotline or from doing a sheltering thing, pop this guy open. Again, you got a nice little timestamp. And I called him. Bada bing, bada boom, save that guy. And now we've got a little nice timestamp of when you called, and we keep those across time there. So the only other thing on Hotline is the service request search. So in here, you're able to kind of come in and search for different service requests that you're looking for. Here's that one that we just made, I believe. No, that's actually not true. That's just because I typed the same number. But see how it starts to filter those down to the results. Cool thing here is you can type whatever you want. So if you do have an animal with a name, which I just have a whole bunch of service requests and no animals, but I can type in my name here, and now we can find the cases where I've created a lot of test data with myself. I'm the reporter in that case. I'm the owner here. In this case, I'm also the owner. So you can type in kind of whatever you want here, whatever you have. Probably generally going to be the address name is the most common, but keep in mind you can, if the owner's on the phone and they will refuse to tell you their address, but they give you their last name, that might be a good way to find them. In this case, I could find myself just using my last name. And I also found my wife because I used her as test data too. It looks like I have a couple of questions, so I'm gonna stop and take those real quick. Okay. So we had Lisa DeCarbo. Our one email will be our login despite being in multiple carts. No, so it will be however the owner from that agency sets up your email. If they set it up as the same email, you will actually get an email. In this case, it's actually there's a typo there, but in this case, it would be for shelterly.org. That's actually NAVDAG's instance right now. Yours would actually be, let's take Napa Cart, for instance. It would be napacart.shelterly.org/incident name would be the actual place that you would be logging into. So you could use the same email across multiple carts, but you would get a different login. This link would be different based on who was basically initiating the incident.
Thank you. So Trevor, can I just do a follow-up? Can I use the same password for all of the different Shelterlies with the different carts, or do I have to have different logins for each?
Nope. So okay. The way that it's going to work, sorry, the answer is yes, you can use the same password because it's a complex question. What's going to happen, what I was alluding to at the beginning, is when an incident gets kicked off, you're going to get an email that looks basically like this to set your password. So you won't have a password until an incident occurs. And so you could use the same password over and over because it's only valid for that incident. That's not good security practice, just in general, to have the same password everywhere, but I don't really care. You're able to do that if you would like. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Cool. Can we get county tax office maps and put in this program? So currently no, on the roadmap is developing additional, we're calling them GIS Intel maps, being able to integrate fire data and locations and all that. We're obviously map centric in that we like to have maps all over the place. Here's a map of my shelters that I've set up. So that being said, that's definitely on the roadmap, but it's going to be a minute until we're able to, like I alluded to, secure some additional funding, get through the beta testing and make sure this thing works for everybody, so on and so forth. Can everyone see the phone message box or only hotline people? Everyone can see it. We don't really have the idea of permissions currently. We're basically just restricting access, and everyone who's in there is a trusted asset at the time being. So we are asking agencies to generally limit the number of people that need to be in here. Because it's a data tracking piece, not everyone really needs to be in here as much. We will eventually do permissions. We just need to figure out what they look like. Because it would be somebody's full-time job right now during an incident to be like, oh, this person who had to switch jobs now needs new permissions. And there's only one of me, so that would probably be my job. So we'll go ahead and hold off on that for right now. Can we go back a little bit to the address, please? When you initially create the service request, the first address is where the animals are located. Then the second address can be where the owner lives. Actually, it's the other way around. So the first one, you're actually creating an owner. So this is where they live. And when you get to the end of it, what you're able to do is say, and the owner or the animal lives somewhere else. So if you flip those back around, that'll get you your answer there. Trevor, will there be a test instance somewhere we can use between incidents to stay fresh on the features? Absolutely. All 4 of the agencies will be getting a test instance as well as a production instance. Hopefully by the end of next week is the plan. I have one of them spun up, but we're trying to do it a little bit better so that you guys don't get a whole bunch of emails for instances that are going to go away. So we're testing that deployment feature right now. Actually, I was before this call. But there will be a test instance where all the data, and we can just flop that one over every once in a while for each agency. But that's the intention. So every agency will have their own test instance. I don't want to make a global one just because I don't want all the agencies to be smashing against each other, but each agency will get their own test instance to be able to test. And then we'll be updating that one periodically with new features as they come out. All right. Oh, wait. Nope. Yep. I caught up. Okie dokie. So Any other questions on hotline? I'll come back and check in a minute, but we're going to head over to dispatch. Actually, I'll just point out there are 2 other workflows here. They're very similar, non-owner calling, a little bit less information on the first page. The other 2 pages are basically the same. In this case, you see there's no location information for the reporter. So when you get to the service request, you have to enter the location of where that animal is. And then first responder, the only difference is you have to enter in the agency for that individual, and that just gives us some, level of confidence on that call. At least it would for me. Dispatch. Dispatch's little landing page is a nice little update here, and this is driven towards people that do dispatch. What we've kind of done is now we can give you a view where you're able to select which team you want to view, and you can actually see the work that they're doing in the field. So it's nice to be able to check and say, okay, team 2 is out in the field. They're working on these 2 assignments. Team 1's over here. You're able to see all of them at once as well. In the next week or 2, the intention is to add the ability to do check-ins and check-outs from specific service requests when a team goes there. This comes from me watching actually Lisa at the incident, writing down furiously all this information and then trying to track it and piece it back together piecemeal. So I'm actually going to sit down with her and we're going to take a look. And basically it's going to be a timestamp attached to when the team arrived at a location and then a timestamp when they leave. And that way we're going to even have a better idea of where our teams actually are in the field. Some of us have GPS radios and whatnot, which obviously is a little more accurate. But if a team was working this one and just finished, and they're headed to this one, they're probably somewhere along the 99, right? So that's the idea, is just to give us a little more insight into where teams are working. And if we have safety concerns, say the evacuation zone comes out to here, we can call them up on the radio and say, hey, team 2, go ahead and do not go to 4239 Rancho Road. That's going to be in the fire evacuation zone. Just an easier way to see that pretty quickly. Inside of deploy teams, this guy should look pretty familiar. Hasn't had a huge amount of changes here. I only have 1 service request, which is not great because I've already assigned them all. But as you can see, you can still select them. We do have the little icons here. The teams is the main thing that I'll point out. So in this case, we now have the ability to reuse teams. So if a team has gone out into the field and operated together within the last effectively 48 hours, they'll show up here as a team that you can select. So instead of having to go select each individual, you can just select that team. Ooh, now I got a whole bunch of them. So there is another team there. You're also able to add additional people. Oh no, I don't have any other team members. You're able to add Steve Smith there to the team. So you can expand the team, you can shrink the team. It's just an easy way to get in there and quickly reuse and not have to worry, especially if you have 5 or 6 people out on a team. You can also change their team name here, nice and easy. Same idea, then you deploy them out into the field. This one's a little weird. But once you do that, you'll see that they end up going out there. You can go, actually, let me do that slower. Sorry, I clicked very fast there. Similar to Hotline, you can search for service requests. Here, you can search for dispatch assignments. Click into there. Same idea. You have a little mini map, again, giving you an idea of roughly the work that they're doing. So this is team 2. This is from a couple days ago because I'm on my little test environment, but hopefully they got this cat and that dog because that's been a minute. But you're able to go right from here, quickly see where they're doing their work. You can dive in with these little clipboards, or in this case, this is the triage icon. So once this team, say they're coming back out of the field and you're working intake at a shelter, you click in here and you start going through this dispatch assignment resolution form. This is probably one of the more complicated areas and will take some specialized training for the folks that are going to do that. I'll give everyone here just a high level of what we're kind of doing. At the very top, these are kind of the, hey, this work didn't get done section. And that happens. People get tired, it gets dark. We just talked about maybe they weren't able to go there because the fire was coming into that area. So you can say not completed yet. That's typically, I underestimated what size a medium Mastiff was, and the back of my Prius is very full and I cannot go get that cat. So unable to complete yet, leaves it with this team. And And so it will still be assigned to this team and they can still go and work it later. This is more like, I'm done for the day. I got to go get a sandwich, but I'll see you tomorrow. And that allows it to go back into the queue and get redeployed. As you continue down, there's some basic information about the service request, and then you get to the animals. In this case, we only have one cat, and we want you to actually, in fact, you can't go past with this animal staying and reported. You need to set it as at least one of these. Typically, we're going to put it into sheltered, which gives you another little box and allows you to put it into a shelter location. Date completed. We're going to go ahead and do that. Follow-up date is primarily for doing sheltering in place. We're using the same tool here for sheltering in place, and then any visit notes that you have. In this case, this one doesn't have an owner, but if you have an owner, there's an owner contact object similar to the one I made by hitting that telephone icon that gets created, and you have to do it to get past here to remind the evac teams that they need to call the owner and let them know we got their dog out. I'm going to go ahead and say unable to complete on this one, and we'll save. Oops. Did I not click the button? Uh-oh. Now I did it. Live demos are fun. We'll go ahead and let's head down to this one and give that one a try. This one has more animals anyways. It's more interesting. So you can see all of these were set into either shelter in place, and that's where that follow-up date comes into play. I'm going to go ahead and say unable to complete and just see if that was the bug. I think it might be where the bug is. So, no. Don't know what's going on there. So we'll go ahead and skip ahead. So once those animals are brought back in, that triage, like I mentioned, that's probably going to be one of the more complicated tasks, and the intake folks will get a specialized training on that. Once you get past that, you basically drop those animals into a shelter. The shelter can come in here, and this is the shelter heads up. And this kind of shows you the rough map. You can click on these to get into a shelter, or you can click on these. You still have the search animals and search owner functionality here as well, but you're able to click in to a given shelter. Let me go back to this one. Having all sorts of problems right now. There we go. We'll go with this one. And in this case, we have a building. So this was the east building at the airport. We have a cat room. You're able to kind of dive down in there. I know there's a bug that I'm going to go ahead and not click right now that I just found right before the call, but you can go into a room and typically you can assign an animal here. This one doesn't have any animals waiting, which is unfortunate. Let me go find an animal and put them in there. Aha. I see what's happening. Let me do some ad hoc technical support over here. Fixes this up. There we go. So I'm going to move one of these animals so that we can see what it looks like. So I'm going to put him in the airport and save him. And so now we go here. There's this section here called roomless animals. And this is like that's that bug. Cool. Real fun. So you're able to basically, and unfortunately I can't show you that right now because of whatever that bug is that got introduced today before the demo. But basically there's a drag and drop functionality that allows you to place animals directly into rooms, move them around pretty easily. And that way you can actually keep track of specifically which room that animal is in. Other than that, that's a really high level functionality overview. I have one other thing that I did want to show is for a new service request. For instance, this one. This is kind of a cool dispatch functionality. It's a little more hidden than I ultimately want. So this one's currently open, which means somebody needs to go service it. You can actually click this guy, which will bring you to this little map that actually allows you to assign it to an existing team out in the field. I know this is something pretty commonly we'll do, and something that I don't think I showed off last time. So the little star is where the service request you're trying to assign is. And when you click these, it turns green, the grouping. So we have team 1 out in the field, and they're servicing this one service request. You can open this up to see the service requests. Or we could assign it to team 2, and they have 2 service requests out there. So it's just an easy way to attach to already existing dispatch assignments to make sure that we're not wasting time. And so obviously you would need to call them on the radio and say, hey, here's your basic information. We're giving you 1 additional dog, 1243 Magnolia Avenue. They write it down with pen and paper, unless they had cell phone service. And then we would be able to now see that that one was added to this dispatch assignment of work that was already happening. So this is that one that we talked about before, but now it's got 1 extra guy that we just built on there. Cool. Let me go ahead and check how our questions are coming along. I don't think we have any more questions, which is awesome. At least text questions. So we're at a decent stopping point here. That's a very quick overview of the functionality, at least a good decent amount of the functionality that exists in here. One of the things I will point out is you're able to edit any of these objects. So you can always come back and make modifications. This little pencil icon is going to be pretty ubiquitous for us. That allows you to come in, tweak the location if you need to, maybe move the pin, whatever you need to do. It also applies to animals. So you can come into an animal, and as additional information, you find out that guy actually is a little aggressive. And now I know. I looked under the hood, he's fixed. He's not confined, because that's really, and he's not injured. And now we've had the opportunity to figure out it's a male. The vets come through. Behavior notes, maybe probably document why the dog is labeled aggressive, might be valuable there. As well as, this is the last thing that I'll point out on this page, which is the found location. Works the exact same as, nope, it's not gonna work right now, cool. But it works the exact same as the location generally, which allows you to basically use the little mini map like we were doing before, and drag. That's where that dragging is going to be really important, especially for reunification of unowned animals. That's going to be really important, as well as adding images. Always going to be good for intake folks to be working on that. Okay, now we got some questions. In regard to updating a service request to completed, not completed, etc., evac will be using the dispatch tab under the service request in the field, correct? Will evac now, oh, let me answer that question. So yes, completed versus non-completed is basically a result of, they basically go from open to assigned. And when you do them in a dispatch assignment, when you do these resolutions here, once this all finishes, Shelterly on the back end says, all right, all these animals are in a good state. We feel comfortable that this one's actually completed, and that's when it'll move it to closed from a service request perspective. Number 2, will evac no longer using their paper request for animals altogether? So what we'll actually be generating is a paper form of this effectively. We have some concerns about connectivity for our evac teams. And so evac, luckily, and evac's actually pretty excited about this, won't really have to be in Shelterly. They will be getting a printed form that they'll be able to write up all their notes for all these fields. And then they get to go back and they get to throw it at somebody and say, all right, I'm going back to go get more animals. So that's what we're going to try on this first season. That's one of the things that I'm most curious to see how that ends up working out. It'll look roughly like this. It won't have a black background, but it'll have all the fields and all that kind of good stuff. Excellent. And that's the questions I have. Cool. So if there are any other questions, I think we've got a decent amount of time here. I can continue to play around and show you additional stuff, but if anyone has specific, how do I do X? Those are the type of questions I would like to see this evening, because this is about you guys learning how to use this. And any questions that you're seeing that might come up are going to be really valuable probably to the broader audience here, because I bet everyone probably has the same questions. These have been really good questions so far.
Trevor, this is Karen. I just had a question. We have a lot of animals that are severely injured and they leave, they come from the field and they go directly to, let's say, BCA. And then when that comes back, there's going to be a spot for that to show up, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Right now, with the way the functionality is built, I would like to do more vet-focused work inside of Shelterly. We have a workaround for the time being, which is to make a, Valley Oak VCA shelter location. And basically you can transfer that animal, you make that the shelter location, and we
Awesome.
track every time the animal moves between shelters. And so we will have that history. Ultimately, I would like to, when we do that, have a note associated with it of why the transfer was occurring. And then when they're at the vet, I'd like to also be able to, when we get them back, enter all the medical notes that were recorded for that animal. Those are all on the roadmap. But in the meantime, we would basically set up a shelter that is the Valley Oak location or the, ASPCA, wherever it ends up being that they're going to get veterinary care. But that way they never leave our system. And more importantly, when an owner calls and says, "Where is my animal?" we can say they're at Valley Oak right now.
And the only other thing that can tend to happen, and I know Ryan it may be working on this, is let's say that it goes directly from the field to the vet, then owners will come straight to the vet. So I don't know if the hospitals can get into this where they're saying that the owner picked up, because a lot of times we don't get that information. This is just kind of the medical gap that we have.
Yeah, and I think that's something I know that John and I have discussed, and I know John is working with vets to make sure that we have good SOPs in place.
Awesome.
I have no concerns personally with vets being able to come in here and put that information in here, but it's going to be a training issue.
Yeah.
If we have at least an SOP where we get a piece of paper back at the end of the day from the vet that says these 3 animals went home, somebody on our side can do the data entry, and it's as simple as coming in here, grabbing an animal and clicking this button right here. And that means the animal went home. That's what that's going to do, right? So reunify that animal. It's now, we're tracking the fact that it went home.
Awesome.
So, and we can do that directly from a shelter location, which I just did there, or, like we're saying, VCA or ASPCA is also at that location. So we really just need to get the information. Like I said, I have no qualms with them logging in. I just don't think they will do it. So I would rather we focus on making sure in an incident, the vets let us know at the end of the day, or we just call over there and find out, and we make that part of our process. At the end of every day, somebody calls over there and says, "Hi, the good thing is we're going to have a list of animals in Shelterly that are at that shelter."
Yes.
And we go, "Cool, tell me about Steve the turtle." "Cool, he's still there. Great. Tell me about Tony the tiger." Right. And we go down the list and we get to, Carol the cat, just to continue the alliteration here, because that's fun. And they say that one actually went home with the owner. We cleared it, issued antibiotics or whatever they may include. But we can do that with the system. I think those are the type of things that are going to get ironed out the first time we do an incident as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Cool. All right. I think we got some more text questions here. So let's go ahead through those, guys. For the dispatch page for evac, could they also fill it offline and then upload it when they get back online? Not currently, no. I have concerns with people actually doing that. I've been playing with that methodology on the search and rescue side, and people do not upload their data. They say they do, and they think they do, and they do not. So we're going to try to avoid it on the first pass because of we had less than 40% response rate when we did it during search and rescue out of about 200 people, which was a substantial loss in data, substantial, almost catastrophic. Will there be a NAVDAC video of how to use Shelterly and input info for all of the different teams, hotline, dispatch, evac, and etc.? That's the intention. We've done some user acceptance testing training with the individual groups. Over time, we're getting to a place where the UI is going to stay relatively stable, Kate, so that we can actually do videos. There's one little overhaul that's coming out next week before we do that, but look forward to those. And there'll be a series of them is the intention. Having small group meetings is also advantageous for the people that are very critical to those components. Those have been pretty successful. We've been doing those already. Will animals still be photographed and the photographs will be stored, and the photos will be stored? Yes. So I didn't do it right here, but you're able to add photos directly to animals. In an actual Shelterly instance, those are all saved to the cloud, attached to your instance. And so they will be there forever. They have AWS redundancy attached to them, whatnot. So that's not a concern at all. In fact, if you use Shelterly from a device with a camera and you go into here and click this, it'll actually open your camera app and you'll be able to take that picture, click side shot, take a picture, extra, take a picture, so on and so forth. When you click save, those will upload them into the cloud, and bada bing, bada boom. Can we rescue wildlife within reason, of course, if necessary? I volunteer at a wildlife rehab and work there one weekend day a week. If so, is there a separate process in the program? There's more of a holistic question about rescuing wildlife. That I am not in charge of that aspect. I know it's going to be specific and based on injuries and that kind of thing. I think there's a disincentive to like bring in a whole bunch of raccoons, but I don't know. As for can Shelterly handle it? Absolutely. If it's an animal, we can track it in here. So it's going to be up to the powers that be to decide what animals are allowed to be sheltered. But if they are sheltered, they need to be in Shelterly, I guess is the long way to put that, guy. Oh, there we go. If I had scrolled slightly further down, we got an answer to the do we rescue wildlife? There we go. Call fish and wildlife. And I think that's the last of the questions. Got some statements in here too. Cool. All right.
Trevor?
So, yes.
I'm sorry, it's Erica. Has there been a lot of work in regards to the reporting that will come out of Shelterly?
So what we will have is on the homepage, we'll actually have some reporting metrics coming out of what was requested by the EOC. That's something that I need to transform from a series of email conversations into an actual requirement. But that should actually be pretty easy once I just do that work of sitting down and contextualizing it. A lot of it has to do with, number of service requests entered, number of animals sheltered at each location. I think we'll have decent bare bones coverage as soon as the reports are done. I already would like to see some like date range filtering and that kind of stuff as we're able to continue. We're kind of, like I mentioned previously, we're kind of getting to the end of being able to build new stuff right now. So I want to get those reports and a couple of other little things in for this first season, and then kind of make sure we have a good solid product from there and spend the resources we have on bug fixing and operational support when we have an incident. But that being said, I do want to make sure to get people's input, especially if they're familiar with the EOC, once those reports come out, and figure out what else we need to do. Writing reports is pretty easy. Defining reports is pretty hard.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of printouts and, with the whole intake process, we still have the liability form for the owners to sign and stuff like that. So I just didn't know if that went anywhere yet.
No, I believe on the liability form, we decided because we weren't sure on the legalese and how it works that we had to do those in paper still, was my understanding for this season. And then we're going to try to convince some lawyers to write up, I don't know, some papers that say we can not use paper. I don't know how that works.
For maybe electronic signing at that point for something.
Yeah, something like that. I don't have enough knowledge or expertise in that field right now to be like, oh, here's the solution. And we know what works and we know what doesn't get us sued. And we're all volunteers. So
yeah.
Out here today.
There's just still processes for us to work on with regards to probably in each of the stages, that how ultimately wonderful Shelterly and what process we need to build around it for some of the needs we have that Shelterly can't do right now. But it's already taken a very big step out of what has had to happen before. So great.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we wanted to do, was tackle some of the bigger time sink type of issues that we see across incidents. And we're going to definitely try to continue to polish and add additional functionality. We don't want to become the solve it all for all of animal stuff, but we definitely want to be the solve it all for animal rescue.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so to answer your question-ish here, Mary Masters, that's exactly what we're talking about, number of dogs. So breaking down, I have a whole series of emails with Ryan around what he needs, and that's exactly what it is. How many animals are in this shelter? How many cats are in this shelter? How many dogs are in this shelter? How many lizards? How many animals did we rescue today, right? So those are all the good numbers that the EOC and more importantly, the press likes to hear. And those are going to be valuable to any agency doing this work, right? Like that makes us feel good. That also allows us to go to the news and say, look at the good work we're doing. And hopefully that allows us to do some fundraising to be able to justify what we're doing out there, and be able to continue to do all that good work out there. All right. Any other questions coming through? We'll give it a second. Feel free to use your voice too if typing is less convenient for you. All right, I'm gonna click around and do some other stuff then. So the other thing, let me see if I'm gonna make a couple more here just so we can have some examples.
Hey, Trevor.
Yes.
Lisa here. Quick question. Sorry if you already said, maybe I missed it. You talked about all the great animal metrics, which is fantastic. What about metrics around how many either people or teams we deployed during a given day, or maybe how many shelter-in-place visits we did? I think those are both interesting data points.
Yeah, from a number of service requests or like work that we're doing, that's definitely something we're targeting. Number of people leveraged, right now we won't be able to do that. I would be able to tell you how many team members went into the field on evacs. Moving forward, and again, these are things that are on the quote unquote roadmap. This one's probably a little bit further out, is leveraging another tool that another guy that I know has written for generating 214s, and it's kind of like a volunteer sign in, sign out application. Integrating that in some capacity would give us a better count of how many man hours of volunteers did we end up using at the end of the day. We built a prototype like that during the the bear fire for the search and rescue effort, and it saved us an enormous amount of paper, time, headaches. We ended up with 14,000 214s that we generated automatically across because people logged into our app thingy instead of signing papers.
Nice. That'll be really good when we get there. Thanks.
Yep, that's out there. The road's very long, but it's a nice roadmap.
Hey, Trevor, this is Kate. So maybe end of next week, there'll be a test system that we could play with.
Yep, that's the intention. I'm going to go probably after this evening and work on testing the functionality that my architect made for us to make sure. But the intention is to have both your test instance and your production instance ready by the end of next week for all 4 agencies.
That would be great, because for hotline training, the hope was we could integrate this. It would actually be hands-on.
Yep. Is that next week?
No, I don't have it scheduled yet because I wasn't sure where Shelterly was.
Yep. Yeah, we're just finishing up. I think I found a couple bugs today that I'm gonna need to fix, obviously. Thanks for playing along with me there. But the idea being that, yeah, your instance will be set up. I'm gonna do the test one first. I need to figure out a way to not send out the emails on the production one because I don't want people to get them confused. But I'll have that instance ready for you. And then if we have an incident, I will just kick off all the emails manually, just in the time being, because I don't want people accidentally going in there and making test data. Medium to longer term, that's going to be managed by not me directly, but by Kate, for instance, will be able to go into this launch pad that we've talked about. And that way each team could actually spin up their own test instance all they want. And then whenever they had an incident, they could go in and do the exact same thing because it's the same steps. So you'd be able to have as many instances as you wanted within reason. I do get a text message every time we make one. So, so don't go too crazy.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. And just so everybody knows, if we did have an incident tomorrow, we would do everything the way we did it last fall.
But in like 3 weeks, when fires are actually going to happen, we have 3 weeks really until fire season. Actually, I think we had a fire yesterday in Bangor, didn't we? It's right off. What's that road out there?
Yeah, we had one. I can't remember the name of it. Yeah.
I know. I was in a meeting and we actually got toned out, but not for the fire. I was like, oh no.
Yeah.
But it was a boat rescue because somebody's boat wouldn't turn on in the lake. Apparently that's a search and rescue issue. So Carrie, how do we play with the test environment if we are out of town? So because of the way that Shelterly works, as long as wherever you are, if you've got a computer and the internet, you'll get that email and you'll be able to log in. You don't have to be anywhere specific. So you'll be able to log in, you'll get your email. As long as, I can't guarantee everyone on here is gonna have a Shelterly account, to be honest. That's not my jurisdiction. So that's been handed over to the leadership at NABDAG or whichever agency, and they've defined who's going to have a Shelterly account. And I'm just using that to generate the accounts. In the case of test, we could probably add some additional ones if people are interested and want to get onto that Shelterly team or be able to do those types of roles. I'm not saying you're not on the list, by the way. I just honestly don't know. There's a lot of people on the list. There's a lot of people in this meeting. I do think we could get a can of Raid, actually. That's actually what I was going to do. I was going to mail it to my developer to solve the silly bugs issue. Can we review again on dispatch how SIP works for daily assignments for teams? Absolutely. I've got about 4 minutes left here. So in this case, we're going to deploy teams. I don't actually have any that are shelter in place. So let me get some in there if I can get past this dang page. There we go. So when we go here, we're able to see that this one in yellow is a shelter in place. So when you add it on the left-hand side, it's going to show you your little tally of shelter in place attributes. In this case, you could just build a shelter in place order and then issue out a team here. In that case, you would be building a dispatch assignment. It's the exact same thing. And so now they would have this assignment where they're going to be going and servicing these animals that are shelter in place. And in this case, also going to try to probably find that UTL animal out there. When you triage these, let's say we found that animal. Great, we found the other dog. He's also sheltered in place. What we want to do is set the follow-up date. That's going to be one of the key things to how shelter in place is going to work well. Is let's go ahead and say, we left a bunch of water. That's great. So left enough water and food for 2 days. Please return on April 16th. So we set the follow-up date. This is the date we did it. We're going to go ahead and save that guy. So now this dispatch assignment is closed. So they went out and did that work in 1 minute, which is pretty phenomenal. So now if you come back to the deployment map, you notice that's not on there. That's actually correct because we said we don't want to do that one for 2 more days. Over here in the corner though, say we're feeling frisky and we got people that are like, I need some work. You can turn this off and now that guy will show back up. And if you hover over it, you can see it's 1 small dog, 1 horse, 1 medium dog, 1230 Nord Avenue, follow-up date 4/16/21. But you're still able to add it. So you can send people there. We just try to deprioritize it if you've specified a follow-up date. If you don't set a follow-up date, that one's going to show up on the map actually immediately, not almost immediately, literally immediately. So just keep that in mind as there's different ways to use this tool to do that type of work. This is not a great scenario because typically you're going to have about 10 shelter in place locations and you're going to build the teams and, send 3 or 4 people. The one thing I will show is you notice how, as you move this map around, these are changing, the number it's actually filtering down to the ones that are in your view. And that really helps when you say, want to focus on this neighborhood and imagine there was a couple other shelters in places here. You'd be able to filter down to the list and just interact with the ones that are regionally close to each other. So that should really help making good assignments as well.
Hey, Trevor, was there a reason why in the visit log that you showed a minute ago, the date that you made that particular log entry wasn't prepended on it?
When I was in here, the date completed.
Sorry, I don't remember exactly what screen it was on, but where you made that little entry, we left water and please come back on the 16th.
Because it was actually up here. So this is the field that actually drives what day it is. I typed it in here just because I typed it. We don't need to type it there. This is the part that actually matters.
Oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. That I was thinking in the visit notes. So somewhere as you flashed through this, I saw the visit log. Okay, active date open. What I was picturing is that the visit log would build up over time with whatever, like dog was really hard to find, look behind the garage, that kind of thing. It might be helpful to have the date next to each log entry so you can sort of see what happened when.
And so that's actually what it is right here. So this is that service request.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I see it.
Here's the visit log. So they completed on this day. Here's my note. You could actually come in and update the visit note too if you ever need to update what was happening, and so on and so forth. But yeah, that timestamp's right there. The please return on April 16th. That, like I said, that's not mandatory. That's nice to see the visit log, but you can actually update that follow-up date right here too. So see that this is like, you can update that on the fly, make it the 15th. So you're able to redo all that stuff. And yeah, we keep a persistent log of visits. So this will keep growing every time for shelter in place.
Yeah, that's really nice.
So I'll show you guys, just since we're already there. Let's send somebody out there again. These dogs are going to be so well fed. And then we'll close this guy. Make the follow-up date the 16th. More food and water. Save it. And now when we go to this service request page, you can see we've got 2 entries, right? And it goes from most recent to most not recent. Old, I believe, is the word for that. Okay, let me check. We're about out of time here, so let me check if there's any other questions. Hopefully that answers your question, Jamie. Great work. Yes, so that's exactly what I'm talking about for the reporting stuff. The number of dogs and cats, that's all going to be on the homepage. That's just a matter of me sitting still long enough to write up that ticket, and then my developer will write in about an hour. So that was the idea, is this will be a persistent heads-up display of the critical information. Some of it may be day-based, but we'll have total animals in certain shelters, the different species of animals. And then I'd love your feedback when we get that up there. The approach I'm trying to take on most of these things is go ask the person that knows a lot about it, and that's probably going to be 80% of the solution. And then I bring this out to you guys, and you're like, oh, hey, what about this? What about that? And those are great things for me to add. But what I've learned over time is building things from scratch by committee takes a long time. It doesn't happen. So we're going to bring you that, and then I'd love your feedback. Capacity. So let me actually say the entire question. Would it help to have remaining capacity for each shelter location? We actually had this in a version of Shelterly. What became problematic is different people have different definitions of capacity. If you've ever worked at a shelter, cages can go up if they have to. You can have double layers of cages, you can have single layers. Those are going to be decisions made by the teams. I've thought about adding the ability to define a capacity on a given room. In a room, basically it goes shelter into a building into a room. You can see the number of animals in there, but if we go in operation and we see that that's valuable, no problems adding it. I just don't know how we define what the capacity is. And it's just another thing to manage when really you send a runner, they look in the room and that room's full. So we're not going to put a cat in there. But even just in the UI, if you saw there was 15 cats in the cat room, that room might be full. You're going to have a pretty good idea of that pretty quick, I would think. But currently no capacity idea. We actually have the capacity idea as well on people doing evacuations, and it didn't work well because evac said they don't want to be told that they can't pick up another dog. All right, I think we're out of time here. So thank you, everyone. I think how many people did we end up with here? A little thing go. It's hiding somewhere. Doesn't matter. Thank you,
46,
everyone, for coming tonight.
46, Trevor.
As always, Trevor@navdag.org. If you guys have any other questions, there'll probably be some other future trainings, probably smaller group trainings for specific tasks. I didn't even show you guys everything that's in here. I showed you the key things so that you can say, oh, I need to have a service request. I need somebody to make me a dispatch assignment, you know, understanding how the basic sheltering stuff works. But if you're very involved in one of the specific units for intake or sheltering or hotline, you're going to get additional training. You already have in a lot of capacities. But yeah, reach out to me if you have any additional questions. We're going to keep doing stuff. Like I mentioned, you'll probably get an email. You should get an email next week if you're on the list of Shelterly users for the test instance, and be able to play around in there. When you do get that, feel free to do whatever you want. If you have comments or critiques or things you would like to see or things you can't find, let me know. I might not be able to get back to you immediately, but I will definitely try to get back to you and give you some insight there. Other than that, just want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and we're excited about bringing this forward. It's really nice that NAVDAG was willing to help us put this together, and I think we're gonna, I mean, honestly, save a lot of animal lives just with hotline and dispatch, let alone being able to track the animals in the shelters and make our lives a lot easier doing the continuing work. We're just going to be able to get in the field so much faster and know where our teams are. So we're really excited about it. And so are the other 3 teams, and they are so excited and appreciative of NAVDAG supporting us building this and then being able to offer it to them at no cost. So they're super excited, and they're already 100% evangelists for what we're doing here. The word is spreading far and wide.